we start. So, good evening, one and all. Uh, I am glad to introduce our guest for the evening, Mr. Sini, and also welcome all of you to participate in this webinar. It's our first webinar for the series, The Insider. So, to introduce Sini, he comes with a 30-year experience of uh, working closely with top managements of various companies in addressing strategic and operational issues. Shini is a writer, speaker, mentor, and also an advisor. He's guiding organizations and its leaderships towards strategic change, nurturing strong consumer relationships, innovative go-to-market approaches, campaigns, and building sustainable capabilities. Talking about his prior experience, he was the global head of marketing at Infosys. Prior to that, he was a management consultant with Anderson and also with PwC London, working with uh, different global corporations, governments, trade missions, and public sector companies. He also pursues his passion for writing and playing golf. Today, we'll be discussing parts of his book Switch on sales transformation for strategic advantage. Uh, Now, over to you, Mr. Sini.
Hi, thanks, Rahul. Thanks for this opportunity. This is a little unusual hour for me, so maybe I'll keep dozing off once in a while in between. So I'd like it to be a little active discussion. Rahul, you can probably switch off your camera as well. I think in very strange times, we are all meeting. I hope we're all doing well and working out of your home. So it's a very interesting times we're going through. And I'm going to talk about sales, which perhaps is not on top of everybody's mind. To start with, can I request you people to take a poll? Hello? Can I take a poll? I'm going to launch a poll. Can everybody see the poll and take launch? Please take this poll. I'd like to understand what's the audience today. There are 5 more people to take the poll. I'm just waiting for it.
So, should we just go ahead?
Yeah, I think some people are not taking the poll.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I'll just show the results. So I think we have around 25% of people from executive management, 35% of people from senior management, 24 from middle management. It's quite a mixed audience. Um, Again, predominant financial services, some from management consulting, and some from wider range of industries. So, okay, I'll try and, to the extent possible, address everybody because it's quite a mixed audience. Okay, so I'm going to share a presentation and walk through. The way I'm going to structure, I think this whole presentation is broken into 4 sections. At the end of each section, I can take a pause, take questions, and then again at the end of the presentation, the entire discussion, I can take questions. So this is a book I had written about 1.5 years ago. It's based on my experiences of B2B sales, but it's also equally applicable to B2C environment. I have written this as 9 short stories and 9 essays. So I fictionalized the entire characters in this and the backgrounds. It's not like a case study, but it's like taking you through the daily journey of a organization. So, and written with different industry backdrops. So I start off with this particular illustration and just take some time. So I purposely have created a case, if you see here, that somebody is selling in 1996, somebody is demanding cloud services, and this salesman says yes. And so obviously 1996, there was no cloud services, but like the salesman is selling something which is not there. And so the sales guy got his bonus, got his contract, but subsequently the consultants who came to implement it don't even know what they're implementing, and they are in trouble. In this situation, who is the winner? Is the customer the winner who bought services of products which probably did not exist, or the selling company the winner because it sold something which is not there? I give a very interesting incident, true incident, which happened. I used to consult for a large state government electricity board, and many of them are not very savvy in information technology. Somebody had sold them in way back in 1998, 500 computers with 500 desktops with 500 servers. So obviously, and this 500 desktops and 500 servers did not have any application software running, and they were lying in the different offices, carefully covered to protect them from dust, and they never got used. So obviously, in this situation, nobody benefited, and the relationships of the selling company, probably the selling company would have never been used again. Obviously, I think it never worked. So I just want to again take a pause here and use a different poll now, and just understand your experiences of from your organization experiences. You could probably take this poll and tell me what gets priority in your organization. Are anybody more going to take the poll? Okay, I'm going to stop the poll here. Only 13 people have taken, but it's a very unusual result I'm getting. Other places I get very different results. There's a huge, equal amount of people have voted for customer towards trade-off and financial impact as a trade-off. My experience, many places it is largely financial impact people take. So I think it's good. I think you're coming from companies which are building good culture. So why I'm saying nobody is a winner in this case, because B2B relationships or even B2C relationships are very long term. You cannot, by any short-term gains, will damage more long-term relationships. So most of the companies you've been working for, companies which are formed with a dream to probably make a difference to the market and difference to the customers. But as you move away from the purpose for which you have been formed, that means the core for which you have actually been created to address the market need, as you move away from that, the pressure, move away from that, you actually will struggle to make more sales. But typically most of the companies struggle because the pressure of the targets of course short-term financial results, make them again move away from the course, compromise everything, and postpone the values and the purpose for which they have been set to a longer term perspective. So what happens in the process is again sales as a pressure. Like we just took this poll where we looked at the executive scorecards have an overemphasis on financials. It's a very pleasant surprise for me to see customer impact also has been given an equal importance among the participants today. But in my experience, many of the companies I have worked for, the quarterly results is to be given a lot more importance than the long-term customer satisfaction. So one of the companies, most of us, for example, I have a cell phone, which I've been with the same service provider since 1998. I don't think I have failed to pay even once the monthly bill. But yet I'll get at least 4 or 5 reminders every month to following up on my invoice, say that, I hope you're going to pay on time. But at the same time, if I have a complaint about any network performance or complaint about any customer service, nobody probably even answers those complaints. So essentially, what culture is promoted in most of the organizations is finance first, and everything else later. So when you have whatever is measured is what I think people will live up to that expectation. So I actually worked for another consulting company many years ago, where if I meet my financial targets, that's hygiene. But if I had 15 customers and one customer out of the 15 gave me on a scale of 1 to 5, 3, and everybody else gave me 4 and above, so that 1-3 would mean that no bonus for me that year. So it's again the culture that is cherished, the culture that is promoted in an organization, that makes the difference. So executive scorecards are absolutely important. Most of us experience when we go to different showrooms, and that sales tend to be very aggressive. They are pushy. They are pushing products which are probably they don't even have an empathy towards whether we need the product or not, because they have to meet their target. Sales tends to be aggressive, intrusive, and sometimes very desperate. Organizations I have been to and many other companies I advise, I've been seeing that they have a tendency to measure more effort than effectiveness. So sales governance ends up being measuring how many places you have visited, how many customers you have met, rather than how many deals you have closed. So effectiveness is not given importance, and near-term gains are getting more importance than the long-term gains. If you summarize all these things, essentially the challenge becomes that when you move away from the core, the behavior tends to be this, and that actually leads to a more bad sales experience. So one of the things it may be worth for all of you to consider is to measure, like how does your company fare on your customer centricity? And I think at least 50% of you have said that customer centricity is the main thing for your company. What kind of trust you have built in the market? What kind of trust you have built with the customers? what institutional behaviors are encouraged, what is your organization culture, what drives your trade-offs, and how are your executives measures. These are all measures or things you probably have to reflect to see whether you're customer centric or not. So this whole book is all about being centric to customer, championing the customer need, and if you champion the customer need, you will champion, you will succeed in this whole process. So sales can only succeed when it aligns to your larger vision. Why did you start the company in the first place? The struggle happens when you move away from the why, what your central objective is. And I think so. The book is all about ethics. If you see this, I have ethics in the center. You're selling only what the customer needs, only when he needs. So he talks about three transformations: transforming your attitude and approach towards the customer, transforming the way you engage with the customer, and transforming sales management. This is narrated through 9 short stories. As I said, there are 9 different concepts. All the concepts are narrated through short stories. In attitude, I address 3 concepts. In the engagement, I address 3 concepts, and in governance or sales management, I engage 3 concepts. So the rest of the sessions will be, I'll cover each one of them. I won't really deep dive into one of them because the time does not permit. But if you are interested in the future, I could always deep dive into each of these things, because they can become a session by themselves. And but for which probably you have to read parts of the book to really be able to engage and understand the detail I'm talking about. At this stage, I can take questions. I can unmute you all. If anybody has a question, I can take them now, and we could discuss for some time. If any questions, you could please ask me at this stage, and then I'll take it to the next session. Any questions?
So we'd actually kept the Q&A session for
I
later.
also keep that Q&A, but just in case you want, as I go along, I can also do that.
Okay.
So if nobody has a question, I'll mute all again, and then I'll go back to. So I'm going into transforming attitude and approach towards the customer. So I take you to the first illustration. Here you can see, I think most of you probably browse for information, browse for data. And as soon as you browse, most of the websites now pop up saying, do you want a sales guy to talk to you? This is my experience. I'm sure these are experience across things. If you attend any kind of conferences and you do networking, there are people selling their products. And if by chance, if you left your visiting card behind, there are people are landing back at your desk, hoping that you have something to buy. Most of the times you are browsing or networking at certain places because you're learning about certain topics, you're learning about certain products, you're learning about certain things. You probably don't have an internal business case or a readiness to buy the products. But increasingly sales, because of its pressure, pushes the products very soon. And many times when they are not ready, the market is not ready, they drop the effort of nurturing the customer. So the concept I promote in this book is, are you nurturing your customers, and are you assessing, are they getting ready to use your product? It's an attitudinal shift from pushing your products and getting an immediate sale to nurturing them, building them as potential customers from a long-term perspective. This is so true in a B2B environment, so true when they are buying more sophisticated products. And I think for them, it is also a case of getting ready. So I think one of the key questions one has to reflect upon is, are you an educator to the market? Many of the startups today, many of the, like even when we were building the IT services from India, we were actually educating the market, because at one point in time, only about 15% of the Fortune 2000, Global 2000 were actually outsourcing. The rest of them were reluctant. They were not sure whether they should outsource or not outsource. to educate them. It's not educate is not selling, pushing the things, but hand holding them through the journey of making that decision. So we used to share lessons learned. We used to share the insights from the engagement, help the handhold them in terms of what kind of internal changes they may need to get the best out of outsourcing, what kind of common mistakes others make while doing this. So it is a whole process of educating over a period of time where you build a trust and confidence and handhold them. This is so true again when a lot of new products come, especially from a startup world, where the product is ahead of the time and the market is not ready for it. So, but what happens in most of the startups is they're expecting sales as soon as the product is ready. They are not nurturing. So they are in that process. What happens is that there is more disappointment, more failures, and that in the long run you actually lose potential customers. The other way around, if you look at from the buyer side, many times the buyer is coming in trying to understand how does he take it back, does it fit, how does it fit into the larger picture of the client, what does he need to put it to use. So I think both from a strategic fit, technical fit, how does he manage stakeholders back in their organization? These are all the things the buyer has to do. So what clever organizations do, good organizations do, is help them in the process of positioning their in their company, help them to get ready for use, help them to put the right business case, help them to time it rightly so that they can effectively leverage this product. So building mind share, educating the market as an approach is an attitudinal shift again. And again, here you are building communities around issues. A lot of initial social media, what you see today, the initial online things, we used to build communities to talk around issues which are relevant to the businesses. And the same thing are now being carried more effectively. Better platforms are there now in social media, but the entire nurturing of the market. So I know many cases where we used to see a particular customer in, let's say in 2008, finally the customer will become a customer in 2010 because it takes so much time for the organization to put the business case inside, get all the readiness done. And in this process, the marketing teams, the sales teams are helping them to feeding them information, providing them right inputs throughout the process to ensure that they make the right decision. So nurturing the product is nurturing the customer is a one big attitudinal change, and that's one concept I promote in this book. Then the next concept is all about how do you create opportunities for your customers. If you see here in this illustration, I've talked about how people are looking outside the work for excitement. In this case, these three people are looking outside their work for excitement because work looks like something which is very mechanical. Challenge themselves challenge themselves to create opportunities for their customers. And once they start creating opportunities for their customers, they also create opportunities for themselves. So when you say creating opportunities, you're really creating value for the customers. You're thinking ahead of the customer's need. And then they're looking forward to go to work rather than looking at an outlet like a holiday. So are you taking the ownership of customer outcomes? What kind of outcomes are you delivering to the customer? How are you leveraging your products and services to think innovatively outside the box to actually create opportunities for your customers? So I take an example so many of us sell on features, not on outcomes. So my product has XYZ features, but does it give you this kind of an outcome or a goal? The customer has to, and how are you helping the customer to put to use? I deal with a lot of startups who have fantastic products, who have products which probably can make a huge difference, but have not been able to help the customers to realize the full potential. They're struggling to put it to use. They're struggling to get the customer to get the full value of it. How have you helped the customer to leverage the potential of your product fully? Are you constantly again, are you thinking ahead of the customer needs? So in one of my consulting days, we had gone to a customer, a large oil and gas company, and they had just implemented a large technology operational change across their finance function. So we knew the CFO. We and this is a global organization. We talked to them about looking around the company, and then we went back 2 weeks later and said, you know what, you're in this geography, your finance has 150 people. We can reduce it to 27. So we are going and telling a customer ability to improve, which is not even thinking about. We're creating opportunities for them. We're creating value for them that they're not even thinking about. So that used to be the culture of going to the customer. If you don't go to the customer with a new value proposition, in my that organization, I would be my performance would be rated not rated good. So again, it's a cultural change that, are you continuously going to the customer, not asking them for what to do, but you're thinking ahead of their needs, which again requires what institutional investments you're making to stay ahead of the customer needs. So, and I think that's another constant. Is there a sorry? I think that's. So again, I give an illustration. This is a classical case of a startup. A startup goes. Most of the startups, after building a good, like I was working with an IoT based logistics company, what it was doing, it had 80 installations, but it was all technical implementation. This product has the potential to improve, but it was not going and helping the customer, change the operations to get the value of this technology. So, and therefore, I think the value to the customer was very low if you simply deploy like this, because the product was never getting used. So it could potentially also go and program manage all the dimensions for the customer. That means, that it may have to change the process changes. It may have to do with any structural changes. Many operations changes, should it be able to manage it, or it can own and deliver to an outcome, or it can, like in the case I told about oil and gas company, it can actually give a competitive advantage. So just merely having a good product, good solution does not create value to your customer. You have to create the potential to go and deliver that value to the customer. So you may have to partner with other people. You may have to have the capabilities built within the organization. But it's again an attitudinal shift, saying that, am I constantly delivering that competitive advantage to my customer? Then the third concept within attitudinal change is building trusted relationships. If you see in this illustration, I talk about somebody whose passion is to play golf, and there is somebody who's actually gone there to network and sell. Can these two people build a good trusted relationships? Unlikely, because their perspectives, their passions are different. Their interests are different. If the interests are different on the same platform, you cannot create trusted relationships. Only when you create trusted relationships does the customer look forward to you, unless you have a common passion. The passion can be towards the customer needs. The passion could be anything else. So, for example, one of the customers I used to work for a long back, I delivered millions of dollars of savings. And when my company went back to do an annual assessment and feedback from the customer said he does not look forward to my visit, in spite of the fact. So I was so taken aback. So the feedback was that he comes to do only get the transaction right. He never comes to ensure that what are my next requirements, how should my next 3 years be. He never has come here thinking larger than his transaction, never brought in anything different. While I think he's delivered a fantastic job, I don't look forward to his visit. So I think this is a very early in my life, I had that feedback which said that a customer does not look forward to your visits. And if he doesn't look forward to you, you can never build trusted relationships. And as I said, unless you build a common passion as a backbone in a B2B relationships, it doesn't work. So another example I give is in one of my companies, we used to go to the World Economic Forum. And at World Economic Forum, we used to position our executives not as somebody representing the company, but somebody championing some global issues. Somebody was championing corporate governance. Somebody else was championing public-private partnerships. So they used to then rub shoulders with other CXOs from the different parts of the world, and they become they have a common passion on a global issue, and they used to meet on that purpose maybe 3 or 4 times a year. And during that 3 or 4 times, their relationships are strongly built, and the companies obviously benefited behind these two, this relationship. But the relationship was never about the company, so they had a common passion. So again, so how often does the customer look forward to you? How much do you champion the common interest with the customer? Does your customer see you as a sounding board? So I again, like long back, I used to work for a large multi-division, multi-business company, but it was mostly I was working in the infrastructure space for them, and they used to. I had nothing to do with me, but because the relationship was good, so good that they used to look up to me to talk about some of their internal decisions, saying, "Am I doing it right?" Nothing to do with the scope I worked there, nothing to do with the kind, but they knew I had access to resources and can come back and share. So, I mean, I can ensure that they get the right input for whatever decisions they're making. So again, that's the kind of a relationship you have to build in the long run, that they look forward to you. And uh, and again, for you, for me as a person from any company, to build this trusted relationship, there has to be institutional investment made so that I stay ahead of the customer needs. When I stay ahead of the customer needs, and there is a research and knowledge management that supports me in that, the customer has the assurance that I'm always thinking ahead of the needs of he has. And then in that process, you build that strong common interest and common passion. And in that process, the whole uh, affinity with working with each other improves. So if you look at the attitudinal change, I'm talking about nurturing a customer, getting him ready to use your product, helping him to put the right business case, helping him to understand, helping him to make the organizational changes, get that assurance that whenever they are ready, we're always hand holding them to get ready, building that trusted relationships, and then always thinking ahead of the customer needs and creating opportunities, creating value, creating competitive advantage for your customer. That is the attitudinal change. It is not. It is both at the individual level and at the institutional level. And when this attitudinal change happens, what happens is it creates a pull for your product. You don't not no longer need to sell. In my experience, when we build this kind of a strong pillars with the market, there's a pull created for the product, and therefore sales happens effortlessly. You don't need to go around not to go tactically selling, but the pull is created. So the attitudinal change, transforming your attitude and approach to the customer, the first strong pillar in terms of making your sales, in terms of transforming your sales, in terms of actually ensuring that you have a strong pull in the market. Again, I can pause here. I can take questions.
This is
I think
Arjun.
because there's a lot of concepts I talked.
Hi, this is Arjun. So the topic about creating that common passion with the customer and aligning with the customers was definitely very interesting. But let's take an instance where you don't share a common passion with the customer, but you definitely want to build that trust. So what are some of these strategies or methods that you would recommend to build that common passion with the customer, knowing the customer?
So common passion does not mean only outside the work. You could develop a common passion around the issues the customer is fighting, or close to the customer business. So for example, I gave that outsourcing example. In the outsourcing example, we were hand-holding them to and sharing information, more like the educative process. So these are all quite interlinked. So as you build a body of work, you're sharing, how others are doing, what are the better ways of doing things. These are issues close to the customer business. So you can actually champion some of those things, build communities around it, share information, stay ahead of, because these are issues that the customer is trying to address. So that's one of the first reasons where you're a sound, because as I said, you become a sounding board to him in terms of his business, his or her business. So you become that sounding board. So that is one way. The other thing is outside, like the example I gave at World Economic Forum. Outside that thing, we were trying to really build the relationships more on global issues. So therefore, you're rubbing shoulders with people who are building the global issues. on global issues. But going back to your question, if you don't have a common interest, you tend to be tactical with the customer because all your relationships are very transactional. That is the example I was giving also in the beginning of my career, where I probably delivered millions of dollars of savings to a particular customer, but the customer never looked forward to me because I was only interested in delivering the transaction well. I don't think there is nothing wrong in me delivering the transaction well, but he never saw that I'm somebody he looks forward to. So when you don't have this kind of a common passion, or you don't help him to work on certain common issues, they always will see you tactically. That's the limitation.
Makes sense.
Did
Thank
I
you.
answer your question?
Yes, you did. Yep. Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, it's Ian. I wonder whether I could follow on from that point.
Yeah.
We've got a customer at the moment where we hadn't really realised, but with the account manager, the relationship had become kind of bad, right? What suggestions have you got in terms of when you need to turn around a customer relationship to get it to be back where you need it to be when you hadn't really realised that it was bad?
So it depends again. I think I have some parts. I'll come later in the today's talk, and I will cover some parts of account relationship and sales and marketing aspects of it. But just to answer for now, I think one, if account relationship could have gone wrong because you are not proactive. Account relationships could have gone wrong because you are probably missing on some deliverables. So many times, for example, I think people make a mistake when they're missing deadlines, they're missing deliverables. They make a mistake of not proactively engaging with the customer and telling them, look, I think this is going to slip, but we're going to catch up by this time. So a lot of that things when they have gone wrong, the confidence or trust in the account manager or the account executive goes down. So I think one of the things is to probably, if the same gentleman is or the person is going to continue with the customer, I think probably first go down and do an analysis with the customer saying that, look, this went wrong. We understand these things could have been done better. This is the new process we are introducing so that ensure this is at a hygiene level where you're delivering on time, your predictability is good, you are proactive, and you are engaged. So I think that hygiene gets back right. But beyond the hygiene, if the customer's expectation out of you is to stay ahead of his needs, if customer expectation of is that you have the subject knowledge or the right knowledge to guide him on his decision making, then we have to examine whether this is the right person going there or somebody else has to supplement this person on a regular basis to give that inputs to the thing. I think it depends on the more detailed challenge of that case.
Thank you. Yes, very good answer. And just on that, we've been going through it for a couple of weeks, and we've just almost come to the conclusion that the account manager that's working it at the moment, we just need to change them for the sake of the customer, because then we can kind of have a fresh start with the customer.
That's a possibility, but I think we have to ensure that whatever the good work the previous manager has done, that is also protected. And it does not become something the previous manager is blamed for everything that went wrong.
Yeah.
So it's a good time to take an assessment of what went wrong, what went right, and what can be systemically improved, and what can be, like new things, what new things can be added there. Okay. Anybody else? Should I go ahead?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What happens in the scenario you mentioned that if you do have a situation where you have a different background to the person that you're trying to sell to, it's difficult to build a relationship? Is there any mitigating methods or any way that someone, say for example, you're a runner of a startup company and you don't have the resources to employ someone else that might get on with that, B2B customer in a better way, or have that common ground, so to speak? How do you manage that situation? Is there a way of you building some element of base level relationship in that scenario?
So I think again, actually, if you hold this question, I think there are two parts to it. What is the what is your go-to-market strategy and what is the role of an account relationship becomes very different depending on your go-to-market strategy. I'll talk about that a little later. If your go-to-market strategy is just to be, it is just to respond to or react to the market requirements, then the kind of account relationship could be certain things. If your go-to-market strategy is where you are going to shape up, influence the customer. So what is the role of the account manager becomes very important. So we probably will discuss again this later when I cover that section. Is that okay? Hello.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead just in the interest of time. So the next part, we talked about transforming attitude and approach. The next part is transforming engagement with the customer. So when I say engagement with the customer, what is the right time to engage with the customer? When is the right time to sell? What is the best way to engage and prioritize with the customer, and what time do you do that? And then how do you manage the stakeholders with the customer? There's every organization, there are multiple stakeholders, and how do you engage with that? So if I just again take an illustration, if you look at this illustration, this guy is throwing stone into the air, hoping he'll get some fruit. And if you see, more misses and only one hit in so many attempts. Most of the sales efforts, when I see, they are like this. They keep knocking at doors without any knowledge whether this particular door you're knocking has a potential customer behind it. So are you actually, most of the startups or even big companies I see are not sure if they're working and targeting and working with the right market and the right customer. There's a huge issue here. So I'll narrate a case of one large product company I was helping with in India. It's perhaps one of the largest product companies of in that category in IT. They were going after 100 customers and potentially selling to, potentially finding 5 out of them who are interested in their products. So the problem was that they were just hitting everybody and they're not getting. So what we really asked is, many companies, like I've seen, the lead to sales ratio is very, very, very poor. So it's like this case of 100 to 5 or 100 to 3. So there are more salesmen, more market being covered without an idea whether the product is. So in this case, we asked them what is success for them. So I think one of the key things one has to understand in any market is, what is success to you? The success to this company was that they want every deal to be of, let's say, 1 million euro. If a 1 million euro market, then we said, who can afford 1 million euro? Then we looked at companies which have a particular size of top line or revenue. We said only companies between perhaps 100 to 150 million euro to, or in Indian rupees, 150 million euro to maybe around a billion euro, who can potentially buy this product. Or maybe not billion euro, maybe less than billion euro. We said we've created a market size which can afford this product, which is between 150 million euro to maybe about 500 million euro. Instead, anybody below this can't spend a million euro on this your product, and anybody above this probably already has something similar. It's too late for you to go and sell to them, because this product has been there since mid-90s, or similar products have been there in the market since mid-90s. So anybody above that is already sophisticated enough to do that. Then we said, are you within that? Are all companies? Then we got a list of companies which are in that size pattern, and then we said, is everybody within that group ready to use your product? So what is the ability to use your product? That was the next thing we really looked at. And then we looked at the leadership quality. Do they have a business requirement? Are they growing fast? These kind of things. So then we created a pool of companies, which I call the sweet spot, which you can probably address in the next 18 months. But then we said, who has the propensity to buy your product? Who's got the readiness to buy your product in the next 3 months? So actually, we narrowed down to the set of companies which you can go after. So I think most of the companies struggle on their lead to sales ratio because they have not defined their market. According to me, you can actually create a market where you and your customer are strategic fit to each other. So I'll just go to the next slide and explain that. So what I was saying is, you can create your market, which is of what is your universe. Your universe could be driven by, like in that case, as I said, is it 150 million euro to maybe 400 million euro? What type of industry do you go after? What type of geography do you address? What stage of the customers you want to get into? So should I, if it's a startup, should I go into early stage, or some company which is into future stage? And do you have the ability to provide the services? So for example, in India, there is a company called Reliance. So every startup wants to probably service them, but Reliance is such a huge company. If you become their service provider, there's no way you can do anybody else as a small company. So do you have the ability to provide your services? Then, so I'll give an example from two large IT companies. So for two large IT companies, I used to work for a company where I think for us, if there's no annual run rate is less than $50 million, it is not a good customer. It's not strategic to us. Whereas, and therefore we had only companies which are global 2000 as our target, so proactive target market. Everybody else outside that is not important. We wanted, so whereas some other company which was smaller in size, for them, annual run rate of $10 million is very, very good. So their universe they define is very different. So you can be in the same space of the market, but your markets can be very different. You could be providing the same set of services, same set of products, but your market targets could be very different, because you have to look at what is strategic to you. You have to look at what is your ability to service. So coming to the next one, in that case of that large product company, we looked at, are they profitable? Are they credit worthy within that large set of companies, which are 150 million to that 400 million euro? Then we said, how many of them are really profitable? How many are credit worthy history? How many of them are growing? Then we said, what is your ability to service them? And then finally we said, do you have an alignment with their culture, with their values, with their leadership alignment? So if this is not there, again, targeting those companies are most unlikely to buy your product. So we narrowed down it further, and then we said, within that, who is your target? The targets are those companies who have an immediate urgency for your product. That product was helping better governance. Then we said, is a new PE investment coming into this company, or are they adding new product lines? Are they expanding to new geographies? That means there is a huge pressure on the management to focus on the changes. That means they would want a better governance. This may be the right timing for you to target these companies to go and pitch your product. So this way, what we did is from 100 to 5 conversations, we made from 40 to 10 conversations. So this kind of a structured way of going to market, only going to market when the market is ready for you, going to early positioning your products when that is ready, actually helped these people to have better conversations in the market. Of course, the next level actual sale happens when your price, your product features fit them. But the most important thing is the people are actually anxious and ready for your products at this point of time. So sales is only effective when you talk to people who are ready for your sale. So how do you target it? This is one method, and this way of targeting whom you should go up is what I promote in this book. The next concept, if I really come to here, if you see in this illustration, and most of us experience this, people are like, this call center is calling and this guy is slamming the phone, and you're getting this continuous brochures, this intrusive direct mailers, which all of us, like I spend more time deleting the direct mailers than, like really reading mail. But yet people are sitting across here planning and discussing to do more of the same. This never stops. When I get absolutely surprised that it never stops, that people continuously do intrusive and aggressive direct selling. And yet, the results are so poor. So they just said, let's do more of the same. So I personally feel in even B2C or B2B, direct selling is good, okay for awareness, but it's not good for, setting engagement. Nowadays, you have such strong social media networks. You can leverage your network. You can, if you get into an organization, if I know somebody and if through that somebody I set up a meeting, there's more likely chance that I will have a good meeting versus me doing a cold call and setting up a meeting. All of us, from our current work, from our previous work, from our alumni network, we have such good networks in the market. All we have to do is leverage them. But if you approach me to say, let's say, get me an appointment with the CEO of Infosys, will I give? I will only give it to you if I trust you. I will only give you if I have a confidence that when you go to that CEO or when you go to my relationship, you're going to offer something to that person which is valuable to that person, not offer something you're going for your purpose. So only when I have that trust in you that you will think about the value of that person always, I think that is when I really will position it. The other concept I really talk about is that, do you know what is strategic to the company you are going to? How many of us read the director's reports of the target customer? And if you see in the director's reports, you know what is strategic to them. Do we know how do we align our products, our solutions? Will that address what is strategic to them? Many cases, I find that if you are positioning products or services which are not strategic, you will not find a champion for you within that organization. You probably will be in many of the not essential or not even desirable set of purchases. So you may, so one of the other things you have to do as you leverage your network, you also see if you can find a champion for yourself in that organization who will champion your product because it addresses their strategic needs. So I think the other way of looking at it is going back to that first one where we're talking about, do you understand their propensity to buy? Does your product and solution address their immediate need? If that does, then you'll find a champion to take you through that organization. Then you can leverage your networks to go there and never do this cold calling. So I think how strategic is your product, how right is your timing, and how are you leveraging your network, and then you'll always find a champion within the organization who can take you through that. So this is the second concept where I think I believe for effectiveness, direct marketing does not work as much as leveraging the network and finding a champion who is driving the strategic need of that company, aligning it to your products and services to that, timing the propensity to buy, understanding the propensity to buy and timing it rightly that way is another way of going down. But having done that, just come to this one. And if you look at this illustration, and this is a story I must tell you that we used to work in IT industries. I don't know how many, I think many of you don't, where we have large campuses, and when customers are brought in, they're taken through the campuses, they're told about how wonderful these campuses are, what facilities that it has, and we are working on so many things. We throw things at the customer. So I was once giving a ride to somebody in my car from one of those one of the IT hubs in Bangalore. And this gentleman got into my car, and as soon as he got in, he started he was on a conference call, obviously, and he was telling somebody that, look, this customer was visiting today. I showed them our cloud solutions. He said he's not interested in that. Then I took them around and showed our new solutions on AI. He said, we are not interested in them. So then I showed them something on our RFID solutions. This guy said, I'm not interested in them. So tomorrow I'm going to ask him, what is he interested in? So a lot of times, if you see, this cartoon is all about the customer is asking something, we throw darts at them, hoping that whatever you're throwing at them works. So I think this whole thing is about understanding, do you know who the stakeholders are? And every buy has many sophisticated stakeholders. Like, so I do a lot of leadership coaching. So when I do a lot of leadership coaching, when I walk into a organization, there is the person who's getting coached. So he has his own set of concerns, and he's a user of my services. So he'll be concerned, do I like this guy? How many sessions do I put in? What effort? Is it outside my work, or can I integrate it with my work? Then there is his supervisor who's thinking about, should I coach this guy, or should I get a new leader from it? How much my business strategic interests are going to be addressed through this. So his issues are very different. Then there's a HR which says, is it within our budget? Does this coach have a governance process? Does he have a right methodology? Do we go by that? And then he's concerned about whether I meet their L&D standards and all those things. So now when I go and engage with this organization, I have to calibrate. I have to understand each person's of this expectation and calibrate my communication not only at the time of sale but throughout the engagement, so that everybody is carried through this engagement. Similarly, when you buy, there is a value buyer. There is somebody who's going to put the product to use. There is somebody who's a technical buyer. There are different buyers, and unless you map them, and unless you calibrate communications, unless you understand whose needs are what, you will never be able to get the sale going. And I used to sit on a sales governance for one of the companies where we used to see in the pipeline for almost 6 months. Somebody is one case which they're saying it should close anytime because they're doing prototypes after prototypes, and they were doing demos after demos saying that it's working. So then we got behind it saying, what is it happening here? There, it was a product that will help simulate making of components for a manufacturing company. And the R&D department as well as the IT department were very, very keen on the product. Nobody checked with the top management that the top management has said that year they want to reduce the number of components that the company uses, and they wanted to reduce. So even if the technically R&D and the IT were excited about this product they were selling, the management would have never let it happen. So without understanding all the stakeholders, if we continue to do our sales efforts, many times the sales will never happen, although there will be interest shown to your product. So this is a whole chapter I talk about how do you map, how do you address, how do you engage with the stakeholders. So this is the concept. So if you go back to effectiveness, the effectiveness is to work in the right market, target the right customers, only sell when there is a propensity to buy, then leveraging your networks, finding a champion who is driving that strategic change, and you're positioning your product to that, and then finally mapping the stakeholders, understanding each stakeholder's expectations, and then calibrating the communications, managing them. So that whole process. So when you do all that, the sales successful transaction engagement will build lasting relationship, because once your relationships are good, this will enhance effectiveness. So I think what really we're talking about is, one is attitudinal change, and then once you have an attitudinal change, working more effectively. And I think then from there, now I'm coming back into sales management. Should I take questions now, or do you want to should I take the questions at the end? I don't know how I'm doing with the time. Rahul, how am I doing with the time? Do I have time? Or should I just finish the last section and then we'll take 15 minutes after that?
Yeah, I think if everyone wants you to continue, we can continue, or we can have a question. Maybe
sure.
If they want to voice out. I think we can have a question round.
Anybody has questions?
Like a topic one.
I'm not able to hear you. Can you speak up? Hello? I'm not able to make out who's speaking.
Sir, I think we can move along.
Some of the conversations happening.
Yeah, we can go. Yeah.
Sure. So now I'm going into the governance side, and here I talk. The first concept I bring out is, if you see in this cartoon, there is the first guy who's selling. I'm selling a product where the market is not ready. That means if you take a 2x2 matrix, on the x-axis your market readiness and the y-axis your product readiness. This guy is a case where the product is ready, but the market is not ready. This guy is a case where market is ready, but your product is not ready. There's certain features missing. This guy is a case where market and product is ready. Can the sales governance be the same for all the three? That's the question. In this case, it's about the last topic we talked about. It's all about mapping the stakeholders, because the product is ready, market is ready, you have a match, but now you have to manage the stakeholders, map the stakeholders, ensure that you are helping them to put the internal business case and close the deal. The governance for this, institutional intervention in this, is to ensure all the stakeholder needs are being addressed. Whereas here, when it comes to, it's all about, I don't have a product features ready, and unless these features are ready, it's not going to work. So now the whole organization has to work on, it is outside the sales now. It has to be taken over from sales and saying, we'll get these features ready, hand it back to you. And meanwhile, you manage the stakeholders so that you can keep them informed that we are getting ready for your needs. So the whole organizational governance is the different thing. And in this case, it's all about creating mind share, marketing, so that the market understands your product. It's also all about creating the market to be ready to ensure that they can put the product to use. So the sales reviews end up in all the cases usually with the same set of approach. They don't approach, they manage it as if it is still the same thing. So they don't realize that the interventions have to be different. The internal management, so the sales management has to be aligned to the situation. And as I said, like, the oversight when your product features are being built versus the oversight when the marketing is being done is very different to the oversight when you have to ensure that all the stakeholders are addressed. So in all the three cases, I think most of the organizations make a mistake in this, that they provide the same kind of oversight and they have a same approach to any situation. So it's a good idea in your sales pipeline, in your CRM systems, if you can map out which ones are in what situation. Is this a case stuck because your market is ready, but product is not ready? Is this a case where your product is ahead of the market needs, therefore you have to create more marketing? Is this a case where you are ready and market is ready, therefore now you can accelerate the closure? So I think the approaches are very different. I think given the time, I think I'll cover it at this point of time. But there is a lot more we can discuss issues, cases around this. The second concept I talk about is focusing on outcomes. If you see here, this guy is putting more on the top of the funnel. That means more pursuits are being handled, but there is nothing coming out. The challenge in this kind of a situation is that by pushing more here and not moving things from the next stage, from one stage to another stage, that means you're not focusing on outcomes. So I was sitting in one governance meeting. Again, they were saying, look, this guy has to cover 200 more people this month. But they're not looking at this guy already had so many at opportunity identified, so many at proposal stage, so many going on negotiation stage. Nobody's following up on saying how they'll be moved to the next stage. So unless you focus on outcomes, that means moving from one stage to another stage, what I call as drip feed. So if you may want to examine your own pipeline, saying, are you pursuing more new pursuits, or you are ensuring? So what we used to say drip feed is, unless more cases are moving to the next stage, the salesman is not given the next one. So you focus on a drip feed process, and the review focuses more on moving it to the outcome and enabling the salesman to move it to the outcome stage. So if you suppose a specialist is required to move it to the next stage, are you providing the right? So how do you, in this whole governance process, helping the thing to move one stage to another stage, helping the customer make the decision, and that's where the focus should be, rather than adding more pursuit. You see, in farming we use drip feed. Only a drop is done only when the previous drop is stripped out. So I think that's the kind of a concept this is a whole outcome methodology is. And this is the third concept here. This is my framework on ownership of results. On my x-axis, if you see what is the maturity of relationships with the customer, and on the y-axis, your ability to influence the customer decisions. So, for example, now this is the framework where at the lowest level, your outcome you are owning is only providing resources. I'll provide my resources. So if it's an IT company, you're saying I'll give you 10 SAP consultants, you do whatever you want. If it is a logistics company, you're saying I'll give you 10 trucks, I will give you my warehouse, you do whatever you want. The next level is you're saying you give me specifications, I'll deliver to your specifications. So this is what I call as project services. Your value proposition is delivery excellence, your efficiency, and you're only touching technical. The third level is the customer is telling you a goal. The customer is telling you reduce my inventory. So then the goal setting is by the customer, the client comes, the vendor comes with a solution. Is now to do the solution, he has to touch all the operational dimensions. He has to touch the process, he has to touch people, he has to touch structure, and also technology. So all the dimensions have to be touched to give the goal of let's say inventory reduction. Whereas at this level, when I give an example, I walked into an oil and gas company and said 150 people and reduce it to 27. I'm setting the goal. I, as a vendor, I'm setting the goal. So I'm giving the competitive advantage to the customer. I already have proven solutions, and I'm delivering operational dimension. And at this stage, I'm not only giving them operational and competitive advantage, but I'm giving them new markets and customers. So these are the 5 levels of outcomes you can use. So an example I can give you here is Netflix and Amazon. So when Netflix went to Amazon for streaming, it gave them a competitive advantage to stream. So it was no longer a CD delivery company. Whereas not only give them a competitive advantage, but it gave them new markets like Europe, like India. It gave them new markets and new customers. So every company can choose what its go-to-market is. And when you are on this axis, your relationships are at this level with operational management. Here it's with executive management, and relationships here are with tactical. Here are strategic. Your ability to influence the customer is very high. Now, as a company, you can choose the go-to-market. You can, nothing wrong where you want to be. So different companies, like for example, my experience, Indian IT industry is somewhere here. It is in between the first 3. Very few are here. So some of the companies are here. So it is, you can choose, and some of them choose more than one go-to-market. But can your sales and marketing approach be the same? Depending on, like there was an earlier question on account relationship. If my go-to-market is here, my account relationship is very different to my account relationship is very different. So I'm just going to the next slide here. I'm talking about, suppose I am here. My sales and marketing effect will be very different to my sales and marketing here. Here I react to opportunities. Here I create opportunities. Here I have a Salesforce intensive, because I'm creating opportunities here. It is a subject matter specialist who's selling. Here there is a gap between the person who sells and the person who delivers. But here, because I'm creating opportunities, the person who sells is also the person ensures that the delivery is happening. Here the marketing focus is lead generation, and it talks about credentials. Here the marketing focus is building mind share and saying this is a new way of doing things. Here, the marketing for marketing normally the channels it uses is events and networking, whereas here it does selective campaigns. Here, the account management becomes more post-box. It's an interface between the customer and the client, whereas here it is influential. So, depending on your go-to-market, depending on what outcomes do you own, your approach to how you organize sales, your approach to marketing has to be dramatically different. So I think therefore I'm saying you have to have your clarity on your go-to-market, what outcomes you're doing. Is the sales team approach in line with your go-to-market? Is the sales and marketing in line with your go-to-market strategy? So most of the places, I think most of the companies want to be at this level, but they have an organization which is addressing here. Okay, so I can stop here. I can take questions. I'll unmute you all. Hello. Any questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask. So based on based on the current climate, what would you say? Is there like a very common because I think you've addressed a lot of different scenarios, but would you say one is more common than the rest in terms of, you know, what's the most go-to-market strategy you're seeing prevalent right now in, I guess, India, as an example?
I can talk about different, I'm coming back to this chart, right? So if you look at large Indian IT industry, I have a whole presentation and a paper on this. Here in this book, I covered only sales and marketing, but actually I have a framework which addresses what should your strategy look like, how your knowledge management should look like, how your HR practices look like. If ever interested, that's a whole topic by itself. Most of the IT companies, IT services companies in India are perhaps where my cursor is going around here. Some of the companies which have a pedigree from consulting background, like Accenture, probably enters the market here, and it also now has built capabilities to deliver here. What happens when they enter here? They have a larger share of the wallet because they're entering the problem early. Here, a lot of times, because problem is some piece of the problem is coming where I think the larger part of the problem is coming here. The budgets which are spent from here are more, and budgets here are probably the same problem is lesser. But you know what happens here is the price points are more. So what I call as revenue productivity per person are more here, and the revenue productivity per person is less here. But the margins are more here, and the margins are less here. So companies choose. So predominantly, some companies are now, everybody wants to enter here, but keep this base. This gives them the margin, this gives them the price. Because the cost of doing this is higher.
It's interesting you say that, because I think India has some of the most number of unicorn startups at the moment. So I would have thought they would have been more on the upper scale, like the visionary services, disruptive industries. But you're still seeing, I guess, a lot of replication.
No, I think your question is very good, because if I go back to here, the earlier one point I was showing you, this is an interesting point, because most of the startups have this potential to deliver high value. You follow what I'm saying? The startups' limitation is that most of the startups are staffed only with the technical people. So when they do a very, very good product, they end up only installing the product, but not making the customer get the full value of it. So I think many of the startups are struggling where the product potential is very high. They or the customers are not realizing the full value. So probably they have to find partners that build the right team to probably start doing at this level. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. And how would you say, what's the quickest way to get from there to, like, is it through lots of beta testing, or do you go out and trial customers, or how, like,
so
feedback?
I think I actually have a very interesting question again, because there are several parts to it. I think as they build the product, probably they have to partner with some potential customers. As they build the product, probably they have to partner with certain people who can deliver it for them, because most of them are implemented for them. So let's say, for example, I was talking to somebody in the healthcare business, somebody in GE, for example. They work with a lot of startups, because, for example, when let's say healthcare product is brought into a hospital, for example, they have to work with across the hospital operations and processes to ensure that the product is put to use. But a startup does not have a capacity like that. So early partnering with somebody like a GE, somebody like another consulting company, then they can help them to probably enter. But there's a challenge, is the trade-off is, do I have the control? Who owns the customer? So I think these are the elements that need to be sorted out. I work with a fintech company which can help some of these banks to optimize their operations. However, they found that, and although they had relationships at the CEO levels of the banks are not confident for the startup itself to do the delivery. Now these companies are gone and partnered with the Cognizants and the Accenture of the world. They are able to deploy the solution. So their go-to-market strategy for the fintech company changed to providing the technical platform and this thing, and the leverage of that product to the by the end company has been left to some of the SI partners. I can give another example. Like in one of my earlier companies, we used to do a banking product where probably we, in one example, I think we got a $10 million license fee, whereas the implementing partner got maybe $240 million to implement it. So there is, I think startups also have to start thinking of right from beginning to build certain capabilities like this, do the right partners. Only thing the trade-offs come is who gets what in and who owns the customer. Now these are the challenges which have to be addressed. But I think all of them have a potential to deliver here and even here, but most of them end up delivering here and therefore they fail.
Fantastic, thank you.
So anyone else, any more questions?
It's Ian again. I wondered about, with respect to this, I would have said that our organisation, we're sort of towards the bottom left, but we're trying to move to the top right.
You're in the bottom left.
Solutions. Yeah, I would have said we're around resource.
Okay. So what's your question? Hello?
Looks like some connectivity issue. Ian? It's a connectivity issue. Maybe we can,
Sure.
Anyone has any other questions?
So if anyone is interested, I can do a deep dive into each one of them. Today I had to do a very cursory overview, but deep dive, it would be a good idea to read the book, and also I can then actually go into deep dive of sessions. Like some of the universities I go and do, business schools I go and do a 6-hour workshop on each of these transformation. But if that is an interest, I can always do it another day.
Sure, sir. We look forward to that, and I think we'll get a pause to this webinar and end it here, and look forward to the next session. And we have another class scheduled now, so we have a
Wow, you're
huddle
working
up
through the night.
session. We
Wonderful.
have a
Okay.
huddle up
Thank you so
session
much.
right now. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you
And
so
I
much.
thank you. Yeah, I thank you very much for for talking here, and it was a lot of learning for all of us here, and I thank you on behalf of the cohort.
Thank you.